97% of enterprise developers have used AI coding. Trust in AI accuracy smashed, crashed from 40% to 29% in just 1 year. Only 51% report they are actively using AI daily. But here is the crazy part. METR independent research from July 2025 with experienced developers using state-of-the-art tools were found 19% slower than without AI. But they believe they were 20% faster. 39 points perception gap between feeling productive and being productive. This gap is striking because even after experiencing the slowdown, they still believe AI had speed them up by 20%. Now, here is the other side. 87% of large enterprises have invested in AI coding solutions. GitHub Copilot alone serves over 50,000 enterprise organizations. Boards are pouring billions into AI transformation. Expectations are sky high. But only 29% of developers are actually trusting the output. When boards are expecting transformation, teams are struggling with almost right but not quite. Your company is like this Vespa. It is accelerating at 130 miles per hour. That is the board investment and expectation. But for brake capacity, 29%. That is your team's readiness and trust. That gap isn't just met. It is the distance between high speed and expectations versus overall capacity and safety. And when that gap is too wide, the crash isn't if, it is when. I've been fighting AI coding tools since before ChatGPT existed. Kite, Tab9, Copilot since the beta. I've assessed dozens of companies on AI readiness through the Software Craftsmanship Dojo. Today, I'm showing you how to measure if your team is ready. Welcome to the Forge. This is episode 81. Hello, digital warriors, and welcome back. Let's talk about what is happening in our industry right now. Stack Overflow just released their 2025 developer survey. 49,000 developers across 177 countries. 84% are using or planning to use AI tools. That is up from 76% last year. 51% of professional developers are using AI tools daily. GitHub surveyed 2,000 enterprise developers across 4 countries. 97% have used AI coding tools at work. So, we have crossed the chasm. AI isn't experimental anymore. It is the standard. It is the 50% plus one. But it is what nobody is talking about. While adoption went up, something else went down, and dramatically. Trust in AI accuracy. It dropped from 40% to 29% in just 1 year. 46% of developers actively don't trust AI output. That is up from 31% last year. 66%. 2 out of 3 developers struggle with AI solutions that are almost right, but not quite. You don't adopt a tool that half your team doesn't trust. You adopt it because everyone else is. And then you discover the problem in production. The bug, the outages, the severity one. And there is the beauty. This is the organizational gap, because only 30 to 40% of companies, they are actively encouraging AI tool adoption. Yes, let that sink in. So we have 97% of developers that they used AI tools. 87% of enterprises investing heavily in AI adoption, what we call the accelerators. But only 30 to 40% of companies are actively supporting the AI adoption. 46% of devs, they don't trust the output, and they are using them daily anyway. This is shadow AI, not shadow because it's a secret, shadow because nobody is surprised of it. Now, let's talk about productivity, something we have touched in the last episode. Remember, because here is where, in my opinion, things get really interesting. And I'm talking about the vendors case study, the Microsoft and the Accenture, or others like Google. And at the end, if we look at all these vendors, we can say that they claim a productivity gain between 26 and 21. These are vendors who won't claim data to improve the sales. So let's put them in contrast with a case study, a peer review that was published in July 2025. And I'm talking about the METR, the Model Evaluation and Treat Research, that is published as an independent study. They've put 16 experienced open source developers that they have an average of 5 years of experience on their own projects with large repositories, over 1 million lines of code, with real issues and real backlogs. Which tools did they use? Cursor Pro with Claude 3.5 and 3.7 Sonnet, the frontier model at that moment. So let's say state of the art. How they have conducted the study with randomized controlled trials. That is, again, another golden standard methodology. Now, here is the part that I love the most. Vendors, we have 20-26% productivity gains. Study. When these experienced developers, not junior, experienced developers, they were using AI tools on their code base, the final result was that they were 19% slower. Yes, you heard correctly. Slower, not faster, slower than without using AI. And here is the crazy part. Before the study, they have asked the prediction of how much the developers they feel they will increase their speed of development. And they, in average, say 24%. After the completion of the task, while being 19% slower, they still believe AI had speed them up of 20%. So, do the math with me. The actual result is they were 19% slower, but they perceived to be 20% faster. In the middle, we have a gap of 39 percentage points. They were slower while believing they were faster. This isn't a measurement error. This is a fundamental mismatch between feelings and data, between feeling productive and being productive. And it is the pattern. Who benefits of this gap? Of course, we can look at all the studies that we have shown in the past episode that are available on internet, and we can summarize in almost 3 categories. The junior developers, in average, they got faster 35 to 39%. The senior developers, they got faster from 8 to 16. But the developers above median tenure, they had no statistically significant increase in speed. And if we cross-reference it with the METR, all the participants, they were experienced with 5+ years of experience on their project. And the result is that they were slower. So if you look at the picture from the right angle, it seems that, as we discussed in episode 80, AI is amplifying what you have in the company. So why these experienced developers, they didn't get that fast? To reply to this question, let's rewind to the easy one. Why the junior developers, they got faster? Simple. AI helps them to generate faster code. But if you are an experienced developer with strong coding fundamentals, AI in traditional coding becomes a distraction that you have to babysit, with constantly watching out for hallucination, to reviewing every suggestion, to correct every subtle error. So you spend more time supervising it than to generate the proper code. Here is where things get interesting, as you see. Using AI tool without a improved way of working like spec-driven development results into a plateau of performance for experienced developers. What we have discovered after years of experimentation, and with years of experimentation, I mean we started since way before the public release of ChatGPT, when available on the market were only Tab 9 and Kite. Then we joined the Copilot beta, and then of course we got almost all the tools of coding with AI. So with this experience that is roughly spanning more than 6 years now, what we start to see is the rise of a new way of working that now in the market we call spec-driven development. And spec-driven is the solution used for more experienced developers, crafters, that they want to use AI, taming AI as an assistant, as it should be since the beginning as a co-pilot, a co-worker. How? Training AI with a workflow that is mimicking with specs the way of working of a real crafter in the full lifespan of software, from discovery to delivery. You do that writing upfront the specs that train the AI model with the behavioral layer of a crafter as navigator, no driver. When you have done it, then you write the specs first so that AI can support you to generate the code to create the product you are looking to build, still empowering you end-to-end to have the overall control of all the development lifecycle. And here, guys, is the real unlock, because experienced developers don't spend most of their time coding anyway, as we saw in the last episode. If they are lucky, they can spend 30% of their time developing. So what happens in the other 70%? We have product discovery, we have design, we have backlog refinement, we have all the operational chores with DevOps and SRE. We have all the documentation, all the domain that is evolving, and all the communication and interaction overhead that they need to deal, especially if a team is a big one. That's where AI amplifies experienced developer, not replacing their coding, but enhancing it in everything around it. So spec-driven development expands AI's reach from the narrow line, let's say 30% of your development window, to almost the entire development process. And here is the real shift that we were talking in the last episode, that AI used properly can be a boost of 4 times in a team of crafters. But as you see, if not used properly, is a disaster. Perceived speed when you are getting slower, or zero speed if you are experienced. So that is the problem. The problem of high adoption, low trust. In the middle, we have a productivity paradox, where at the end, what is emerging is that experience determines the outcome. Now, how can we measure this gap? How can we prevent that we believe we are going faster, and then we discover in 6 months that we are going slower because we have the system clogged of tickets and the users that are fleeing away from our platform? Here is where, finally, we can talk about the hot topic nowadays, the AI Readiness Assessment. What we have developed after all these years coaching in the software craftsmanship dojo, people and organizations about the art of building modern software as a modern software engineer and years using AI from the prototypes to today to enhance the coding flow of a crafter, we have developed a AI assessment that goes beyond the commercial that you see around. Because the readiness gap, in our opinion, is the delta between how fast you are adopting AI and how prepared is your organization to use them, to supervise them, to validate them, to integrate what those tools are producing. And the analogy is you are driving your beautiful Ferrari Enzo at 200 miles per hour in an highway. Everything is straight, the horizon is beautiful, there is a beautiful sunset, and you are happy, enjoying the roaring of the engine behind your back. But then suddenly you have to brake. You step on the brake pedal, and oops, you are not slowing down. You discover that you have only 45% of brake capability. And this is a drama because you cannot slow down. And this is the drama that in your organization you will feel when you have accelerated so much the AI adoption and the people are not able to hold it, to use it properly. This is the gap between the speed of adoption and the ability to use it. Most AI readiness assessment we saw around are asking the wrong questions. Infrastructure, data, AI strategy, governance, investment, business plan. Don't get me wrong, these matter, but they are not the bottleneck. The bottleneck, as we understood, is behavior. And now I show you why. Point is simple. Can your developers actually supervise the AI output? Do they have the time, the skills, the practice that can catch mistakes before hitting production? What I understood assessing dozens of teams is one simple thing. The ones that succeed with AI adoption aren't the ones with the best infrastructure. Of course, infrastructure matters, but what matters more is that they are the ones with the best fundamentals. And with fundamentals, I mean ability to stay focused, ability to work in TDD, plus ability to do code review in the proper way, improving the code without destroying the team, ability to have customer feedback loops that are really short and the developers are in connection with the customers. And with this connection, they have proper backlogs that are product-centric. AI doesn't need the perfect infrastructure. AI needs the human judgment that can tell when it is wrong. And trust me, AI is wrong almost every time when the scope of the task is too broad. And when you have a code base of millions of lines of code, this is the perfect environment for an hallucination at every prompt. And this is the reality of a normal enterprise application. So, having an AI coding assistant on an enterprise application has an intrinsic odds of hallucination that is 100%. So, on the other hand, the human judgment is mandatory, but it requires time, skills, and the environment and organizational support to protect the people to have their full cognitive capacity when they are co-working with AI. So this is the reason why we have built an assessment that is based on only 4 of the macro behavioral dimensions that we have in our KBI model. We are not evaluating all the over 160 indicators, but only 4 macro components. Why? Because it's enough after multiple trials that we have done to predict if your organization is capable to use the AI acceleration or it will be smashed from the AI acceleration. What we do is not a talk, a discussion to understand your aspirational goal of the AI acceleration. We observe you. We don't ask you what you wish out of your AI adoption. We check what you have and we look at how you work with it. And the 4 dimensions are focus and time management, technical practices and engineering excellence, product backlog, and customer obsession. Each dimension is bringing you the awareness of specific problems. With focus, can your developer supervise the AI products? Can your developer supervise the output from the AI tools? Second dimension, technical practices. Can your developer validate it? Third dimension, product health. Are they building the right things? And fourth dimension is customer feedback. Will they catch mistakes fast enough? Miss any of these dimensions, and AI will amplify for sure your existing dysfunction instead of your examples. Now, let's deep dive a bit into the dimensions so that you get a deeper look at it. The first dimension is the time and focus management. With this dimension, we need to understand can your developers actually supervise AI outputs? Not because they have the skills, but because they have the time to supervise it. Something that is really scarce, the ability to have uninterrupted cognitive capacity. And as we understood in the last episode, a developer is stepping into your organization with only 30% of their cognitive power. Because we have mind wandering, depleting half of their capacity. We have multitasking, depleting 40% of what was remaining before. The result is 30% of overall cognitive capacity, with the side effect of getting 50% slower in task completion and having a probability of improved errors of another 50%. Also, because of the noise and multitasking nature of the work of a developer, they are affected of continuous content switch. But every content switch has a toll to pay, and is 23 minutes and 15 seconds to return to full focus on what we are doing. Unfortunately, in a normal corporate environment, interruptions are happening around every 11 minutes. So the developers are almost ever able to work in the flow. Now, on top of this cognitive disaster, what we have AI working with us. So every suggestion that AI is moving to a developer requires to read it, to comprehend it, to check its output against the intent that you had at the beginning, to verify if the suggestion doesn't break anything, and then to decide if we want to accept or reject the suggestion and rollback. If a developer hasn't the ability to have the focus to do that, then goodbye. You are under red flag immediately. And as you can understand, you cannot trust the AI code generation due to the nature of a large code base that has intrinsic hallucination into the generation of code. But if the people that are supervising the code, they don't have the brain capacity to stop it, then guys, you have a system that is shipping bugs faster. And for this reason, as you understand, the agentic AI dream or unsupervised AI revolution, as a lot of vendors they are telling, in this scenario is almost a Russian roulette. The code base will explode, and it's not a matter of when. It will explode, period, for sure, and soon. So as you see, focus immediately a first dimension to check. The second dimension is technical practices, something that here, as you see in the Software Craftsmanship Dojo, is a core tenet of our program. Because if a developer cannot understand when AI is wrong, then we have a problem. But I'm not talking about the obvious, hey, you are wrong, but the subtly wrong. The kind of software that still compiles, still passes the test, but then creates bugs and incidents in production with a compound effect that you start to realize in months. This is where fundamentals, they become force multipliers. And I tell you this because after all this experimentation, all this assessment with organizations that are not strong in fundamentals, what is emerging is that in the AI era, test-driven development, acceptance test-driven development, and behavior-driven developments are not dogma. They are must-have. They are survival abilities that, unfortunately, not every development team has. And so what we check is the ability to being able to work with this foundation toward the new way of developing, that is spec-driven development. That means you are writing the specification of what you want to achieve as a top layer of the specification that are describing all your software life cycle. And then you have framed it in a way that you don't need to babysit AI, because the scope of the problem is so narrow that the probability to have hallucination for AI is reduced to a magnitude of multiple zeros. And this way, you can define the code flow and refine it in a way that mirrors every single developer. And when you put on top of it the ability to test the output with the unit integration end-to-end and user experience test to certify that this is exactly what the user wants, then you have bingo, because both sides, the product and the technical part, have the test green that the software was produced in the right way and it's compliant as the desires of the user for the right product. And so you see that in this way, you are assessing a piece of code against a multi-layer of specs. All the organizations that we have assessed so far, that they have struggled with the fundamentals, we saw the root cause was they don't have TDD, and how they can test the output of their software if they don't have the test. It's impossible. So the pattern here is simple. If you test your software after you have code, AI will multiply for sure bug rates. If the developers are saying that they handle the test to the QA, you know that AI will simply multiply your rework. So with this dimension, what we ensure is the ability for you to amplify AI to the next level. That is spec-driven development, or to roll back to the base. And in this way, what we prevent is letting you working with developers that are relying on AI like a leap of faith. The third dimension is the product and backlog health. If there is something that in this latest 25 years after the agile introduction, I'm noticing year after year, is the degradation of product management. I see organization full of walls clustered with a lot of Scrum or SAFe certificates. But then I look at their backlog and I see a gigantic pile of tickets, what I call Jira nightmares of or Azure DevOps L. User stories that are a romance, a novella with thousands of words, dozens of acceptance criteria, hundreds of comments, and a time span to arrive to a user story that is still not ready for development of at least 1 to 3 months. They are not user stories, they are tickets. They are not the user story we were writing in the past on a post-it with a Sharpie. See, in the past we were writing user story here. And on the back, we were writing the user acceptance test as an example that is validating what the user wants to achieve. How we move from a simple post-it to a user story as a ticket that doesn't have nothing to do with what we were doing in the old days of extreme programming. And I am one of that guys that was working in the XP days. I was working shoulder on shoulder with the customers. And I know that these kind of user stories are what we need to create the right product in the right way, not the process that empowers somebody to tell us this is what the customer wants. I don't need a babysitter that is telling me what the customer wants. I can talk with the customer. So the backlog is the nightmare of a lot of companies. A lot of companies that have invested millions in their agile and scaled agile and their DevOps transformations. But because they went commercial, they got Scrum and SAFe and all the consultant. Everybody was happy because the process is working. Reality check after you install AI in your organization is you have an hell of a problem in your product management. And if the discovery and the backlog are the two stages of your software lifecycle that are not working, trust me, you will never deliver the right product at the first shot. And this is leading us to the fourth dimension, customer obsession. So if you have a dysfunctional product management and then you deliver the product that you believe was right, how much it takes the feedback to loop back to your team. An elite team still working in the XP way with a customer on site, they have a time to discover it that is maximum 1 week. Because during the demo, the customer is with them. Technical problems are sniffed and fixed almost immediately due to pair and mob program. But canonical enterprise embracing Scrum and Safe, they maybe get the feedback through a ticket after a quarter. Now you can understand. If I pay you and in 1 week you can show me that you have worked on something and I can cross-correct immediately what we are doing, is a pair of shoes. If I pay you and after 1 quarter I still don't get what you have delivered to me fixed, I guess I will change the service provider and I will go to the competitor. Fortunately, for a lot of niche market, all the companies are like that. So why I need to go to another service provider if the new one will treat me with the same pile of pain? So a lot of organizations, they don't get it. And with AI, if you start to do the right behavior to work with your customer in a feedback loop that is super short, despite all the beliefs that you have about commercial, agile, and DevOps, then you can reach a customer satisfaction that is the proper one. Customer satisfaction that guides you to define the right product. So a feedback loop that returns into your product discovery. But as you understand, you get to fix your backlog and you have to fix your customer satisfaction loop. And if you don't fix your feedback loop with the customers, this dimension explodes. So measuring the NPS, great number, but what we get out of it. So as you see, we measure stuff that a lot of others assessment, they completely ignore because we come from an angle that is the behavioral engineering. We measure the focus because it gives you the capacity to supervise AI, technical practice because it gives you the method to validate what AI produced. Then we measure the product health because it ensures that you are building the right thing. Then finally, we also measure when you have shipped the right things on the market, how the customer are reacting to what you have. And in this way, we have all the software lifecycle measured in 4 macro clusters. If you miss one dimension, the others, they will compensate as much as they can. But if you miss 2, you start to have long-term problems. If you miss 3, or even worse, 4, then you fail. Despite all the millions you are putting in the AI tools, AI will simply be an accelerator, an expensive accelerator for your failure. What we do is we score each of these dimensions, and after we have provided you the score of this dimension, what we find and discuss with you is the gap between how much you have invested and accelerated, how much you are able to handle this accelerator. The gap in the middle is the number that will tell us what will happen to your AI acceleration. And how it works is pretty simple. The gap can tell us how good you are using AI. And what I mean is the gap between how you are feeling productive and you are being productive. How you believe you are moving to how much value you are really delivering. And every point of this gap is a leverage for a gigantic disaster that will happen soon. A lot of organizations, they get shocked of the speed of failure when they embrace AI. And the more wider is the gap, the faster you will fail. And what is providing you a AI Readiness Assessment is the awareness about how in danger you are using this new technology. With what we have developed as an assessment, what we do is not only providing you a number, we are categorizing you in 3 clusters. The first cluster is the cluster of the chaos.
That is the cluster where you have a gap so wide that you have immediately to pause, if not even stopping, every AI expansion. For some customers, we have even to shut down the AI adoption until we strategically have fixed their upskilling program to properly settle the foundation of their fundamentals. All of them. So we bring the developers to the software craftsmanship dojo, yes, but we work also with the leaders, with the product owners, with all the agilists that they have in their company, because they are so dysfunctional that we need to bring them to a point of cooperation that is enough to restart slowly to use AI where it makes sense after that we have reevaluated the organization. The next is the cluster of the organization in plateau, where typically there is a narrow gap between the adoption and the ability, and there typically we suggest a selective expansion, using AI where the fundamentals are strong, but perhaps reducing in the sectors where they are not that strong, and again bringing them to an upskilling program like a dojo to work with them to fix the fundamentals, because without foundations you cannot expand anymore. The third and last cluster is the amplification. It's a cluster where the adoption and the ability start to have the overlap, or even the ability is exceeding the adoption. This is the moment where we suggest to scale AI so that you can leap to the spec-driven development way of working. Now, another question that a lot of people they're asking me lately is, okay, Mike, how we do the assessment? As I have shown you today, you can try to take this measurement by yourself, or you can ask us, hey guys, can you come please and do the assessment with us? And what we propose is a simple assessment that is a 30 minutes conversation, not a survey, not a gigantic disruption for your team. We don't need even your developers. We observe the macro behavioral indicators. So even a manager is capable to reply to it. I have organizations where the CEO or the CTO, they were doing the assessment with me, and they have done it in less than 30 minutes. The assessment at the end will provide you the score with your 4 dimensions and in which cluster for every dimension you are. And so the plan with go, no go, or pause it because you need to fix the fundament. As you see, the AI readiness is a lifesaver, and is the kind of lifesaver that is helping you to understand all the numbers that I was discussing at the beginning. Because you see, and this is the part that I scratch my head because a lot of leaders, they are really scratching their heads when they start to see too many numbers, or they don't have numbers to take decision. The famous analysis paralysis. What we have designed is something simple with only one final result that can help you to translate all these numbers into something pragmatic. I am a pragmatic engineer, and I believe that people in a leadership position, they have typically to take decision where they have 10% of the information only to take a decision that can impact their company in the good, but also in the bad. And so the ethical approach that we have is making complex and complicated things simple to understand. This is why, in my opinion, every organization, especially now that AI is promising an acceleration of 4 times, as we saw from the latest reports, they should stop to believe to the market hype and start to gather data so that they can achieve these results. I'm not telling you that these results are only fake, that are only sales. I tell you that you can achieve it, but you cannot achieve it if you don't have the fundamentals to arrive to that point. You cannot run a marathon if you are not even able to walk. What we try to help you is to realize how much I can run. Maybe you have also the capability to do an ultra marathon. Or perhaps you have the capability only to take a walk in the woods. And with the dojo, what we can do is helping you to progressively increase your ability to walk and then to run until you reach the ultramarathon. And this is why I believe everybody should also release their AI readiness as a free tool to let organization use AI in the proper way. Because remember, behind your AI adoption, behind all the millions that you have invested in these tools, there are people. And they can go in burnout, they can go in depression, they can get family troubles because you have pushed them to a speed that they are not able to sustain. And as ethical leaders, I strongly believe that we have to step back, hold the hand, say, okay, I stop it, because things start to be dangerous. And when you have the boldness to do such an activity, then you can have your people safe to restart the journey with you with the proper help of trainers, coaches, mentor, institution, whatever you believe can help them in order to fix their broken fundamentals and move them to the next step. Until the next time, Digital Warrior, stop embracing AI blindly. Start to be aware of what you are doing and what you are capable of doing. And let's start slowly to build the 1% elite organization that we are always talking about. See you in the next episode. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe to the Forge of Unicorns to stay up to date with our latest episodes.